I am here not to talk about the past. I am here to tell you about our future.
Son of a dictator and heir to the Philippines' most famous political dynasty, Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. was born into power.
I met Chairman Mao when I was 16 years old. I've met all of the Secretary Generals of the UN. I've met all the presidents of the United States. President Nixon, when he came here, gave me the first commercial ticket to fly to the moon.
Decades later, he has retired to claim the office his father held. But with 2 years left in a single 6-year term, President Marcos faces daunting economic challenges, intensified by global instability and the Iran war, while contending with the shadow of his father's rule. One marred by corruption, abuses of power, and martial law, ending in his family's exile. The window is closing to establish a legacy that stands on its own. We're here at Malacañang, the Philippine presidential palace compound. No president has lived here since 2010. But this is where President Marcos Jr. grew up, and this very area around Kalayaan Hall was where his family fled from back in 1986. 40 years on, in a historic turn of events, this is now where he conducts the nation's affairs. His office is upstairs. Come with me. You're at a pivotal moment in your presidency, 4 years into a 6-year term. On reflection, how has it been navigating the last 4 years? Has anything been more challenging than you thought it was going to be?
I had the advantage of watching my father being president, and I always knew it was going to be difficult. The nature of the job really is not different. You have a great deal of work to do. All of it is fairly urgent. Everything is important. That has not really changed. It's the things that you worry about, the issues that you worry about, those have changed.
The added challenge, of course, comes from the Iran war. We know that Filipinos now are grappling with higher cost of fuel.
Yes.
Is there reason to think, or are you concerned perhaps that they could take to the street if fuel prices were to remain high?
That's exactly what's going to happen. It is happening. So that's why the government is now providing subsidies, the fuel subsidies and just straight out cash subsidies to the operators, to the drivers, the whole gamut of them, which is the ships, the buses, the public transport in the cities, the delivery systems. All of these people have to be subsidized so that the actual end consumer feels the rise in fuel prices as little as possible.
Given the volatility in the energy market, given the geopolitical chaos, is there reason to think that there needs to be a reset in relations with China?
I think it's certainly going to happen. I don't think that it's like an option. It's happening now. There's going to be a very, very serious restructuring.
Is there reason to think that maybe it is a good idea to have a partnership in developing the gas resources in the disputed areas in the South China Sea?
Oh, that's something that we've been talking about for a great deal. But the territorial disputes will get in the way of that. Maybe this will provide impetus for both sides to come to an agreement. That's something that we are, of course, exploring. Like I say, everything that might be of help, we are certainly pursuing.
One of the key challenges is the economy. The Philippines used to be one of the fastest growing in the region. Can you get GDP back above 6%?
Yes, we believe we can. However, with the war in the Middle East, those have to be redrawn. Everything has to be redrawn. There is the uncertainty and the lack of stability is going to factor into that. That's the general risk factor is still there. And that's not going to diminish immediately. That's going to taper off.
But how do you get to above 6%? What is the strategy? What's needed?
Of course, it's investment, because when it comes to production, our largest export in dollar terms is semiconductors. We have now moved away up the value chain from just pure fabrication to design. And that has put us in a very good position for the advent of data centers, of AI. We have restructured even our tax incentives for investors. The ease of doing business is something that we've been working very hard on, bring down the costs of transportation, for example, to digitalize. Digitalization is key to everything that we're doing because that makes everything much easier, makes things cheaper. If done right, there's possibility, potential for abuse.
Right.
You remove the discretion in the decision-making process. The other part that we immediately identified, because in our economy, what we always consider our greatest asset is our workforce. We have a relatively young workforce. We have a workforce that is used to working with foreign entities because of our diaspora. They are relatively well trained, but we have to do the reskilling and the upskilling. We also have changed our system of education in a way, the new technologies, the new kinds of skills that are required.
Right. So to be sure, you can attain more than 6% growth by the end of your presidency.
I think so, yes.
And how about 8% growth? In our last conversation, you did mention that 8% is a possibility.
We were hoping to get to 7% by this time. I think we could have managed it, except for these shocks that are coming in.
So 8% is no longer viable.
That's a tough number to get to.
Up next, keeping infrastructure ambitions on track and a political rivalry which could derail Marcos's legacy. Walking with the after-work crowd in Manila is a symphony for the senses. The people, the traffic, the sounds.
Evening rush hour here is a bit of an adventure for most people. According to government estimates, the Philippines loses some $18 billion every year to lower productivity, higher operating costs, and health impacts.
President Marcos Jr. is promising to get things in motion by charging ahead with massive infrastructure investments, including extending subway and rail lines to the whole country. But scandals around building projects during his term have become road bumps, and until those clear up, it might be hard to get the streets and the Philippine economy moving.
For commerce to increase, to become more active, you have to provide the means of conducting that commerce. And infrastructure is key to that. We think now about digital infrastructure as well. And that's why that has become such an important part of what we do. When we talk about development in the Philippines, we talk about infrastructure as the basis upon which the private sector can build on, upon which the educational sector can build on, and competition in terms of labor, in terms of workforces, in terms of all the new industries. The infrastructure has to be there. Of course, doesn't mean that we are neglecting roads and bridges and transport systems. Rail, for example, has been one of the biggest areas where we have tried to develop. We have the north-south corridor that we are developing now. And the rail systems were going to be very important. And then for commerce, for private businesses, is the costs. Yes, you have to bring down the costs. For you to be an attractive investment destination, the cost of doing business, the ease of doing business, hence the cost of doing business, must be competitive. And we have to work hard on that, and we have been.
But fast-tracking growth comes with risks. The IMF warned that 14% of the workforce in the Philippines, some 7 million people, risk losing their livelihoods because of AI, including in the service sectors. You talk about the digital economy, AI comes into play.
Yes.
It has the potential to disrupt a lot of jobs. And when you take a look at the BPO industry in particular, it employs a huge number of the middle class.
Yes.
How prepared are you in terms of jobs disruption?
60% of our economy is in services. And those service jobs will not go away. So whatever employment will go down, perhaps BPOs and things like that, it will grow in the service industries. We've always been strong in terms of services in the Philippines, and not only locally, even abroad. And so that's where we hope to compensate.
So AI is more of an opportunity for the Philippines as
absolutely.
opposed to a threat.
It's a balanced thing. I mean, it's like I say, like any powerful tool, it cuts both ways. You have to consciously do things to anticipate the changes in the employment patterns.
It's not just jobs that have put pressure on the president. In 2025, an audit showed that hundreds of government-funded flood control projects were paid for and marked completed. In reality, the report said many of them were never built or shoddily done. Accusations of crony capitalism have haunted him since. Infrastructure can be controversial.
Oh, yes.
We've seen how billions of dollars have been lost
Yes.
because of dodgy infrastructure projects.
Yes.
We know that you have reshuffled your cabinet because of some of those projects, but you have yet to hold accountable and punish those, especially in the high-ranking positions.
Yes.
Where are you with that?
I actually was the one who brought this to light. And we formed the ICI, which was the Infrastructure Council that was going to gather the information, investigate all of these. They have finished their work. And all of their information that they have put together, all the data that they have put together, they have now forwarded to our justice departments. Our ombudsman for the government examines the government workers who are involved, and the DOJ, Department of Justice, those who are not in government. And that work is proceeding, and I think in the next weeks that come to fruition. It takes far too long. We would have liked it to be much quicker.
When you take a look at the corruption ranking of the Philippines, which is the lowest ranking the Philippines has had in its history, how do you counter that?
That's only because we've exposed it. It's the process of strengthening institutions in a very real sense. And that's what we are doing. And in terms of the judiciary, in terms of government function, in terms of the law enforcement, in terms of bringing people to justice, all of these things have really just started in the last year and a half. This is ongoing, and we're changing it, and we're doing something about it, and we're going to make it better.
You tried to reform the Constitution. You failed. Some of your opponents said that it was a way to hang on to power. Whatever the case may be, what are the limitations of the current Constitution and the impact on the economy?
Look at the more successful economies in the region. The key to their success is continuity. But the way our Constitution is written, it actually encourages a lack of continuity. And that's a problem. The terms for local government is 3 years. When I was a congressman, I first became a congressman, it takes you a few months to learn the business, as it were, and to make your connections, to network, etc. Okay? If, for example, you are not particularly favored in the majority, passing a law in a year and a half is not that easy to do. After that period, let's say after about a year and a half, approaching 2 years, you already hear that there's somebody in your district beginning to campaign and is going to oppose you in the next election. So you have to go back to your district to take care of that. And how much work do you get done? We still have what I call a small town attitude, but it actually extends even at the national level. When I come into office, everything my predecessor did was wrong. Because you campaign that. These programs get stopped because, no, I have my own better program. And they're not necessarily better. So there's that stop and go. That, I think, really gets in the way. Continuity, I think, is the key. And that is the only way for us to strengthen our institutions. Look at the more developed democracies. Whatever happens in politics, government continues to function.
Politics can overshadow policy. What began as an uneasy alliance with Vice President Sara Duterte has developed into open rivalry.
This country is going to hell because we are led by a person who doesn't know how to be a president and who is a liar.
She is the daughter of the previous president, Rodrigo Duterte.
We will eliminate the drug lords once and for all.
Who now faces charges of crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Court over a deadly war on drugs.
The former president to face charges of
The
crime.
Marcos government played a key role in allowing his arrest. Impeach Sara now! And the vice president herself has been impeached twice under the current administration. Impeach Sara now! Domestic politics,
Yeah.
that's been pretty much defined by the warring of the two most powerful families in the country, Marcos, Duterte. Is there any chance of amending of ties?
Well, I don't see it as a war. I'm not conducting any war, political war against anyone. I'm just trying to do my job. It is par for the course that you will be attacked, that you will be criticized. All I worry about is work. All I worry about is national development. All I worry about is sustainability. I worry about jobs. I worry about the economy. I worry about people's lives, safety, etc. Everyone is saying there's elections in a couple of years. And of course, we have to attend to that. But I think it is not entirely accurate to describe that there's a war between, there are warring families. The response is really to leave politics aside, because the work of national development is a million times more important.
Was it a mistake to run on the same ticket as Sara Duterte?
No, I don't think so. I think I think for the time that was the best thing that we would do. We had the same idea of what needed to be done in government. Maybe that's changed, but if you look at it in the context of that period, I think that was the right thing to do still.
Sara Duterte remains very popular.
Yes.
If she were to come to power, are you concerned that perhaps some of your policies might be reversed?
Yes, very much. That is a great worry for me, because we have just started, and these are big things that we are trying to do. We're changing the whole way that we govern. We are trying to reform the bureaucracy. These things don't get done instantly, and it's very, very easy to go off the rails.
Right.
It is continuity that we aspire for, that we dream of, that we work for. And that continuity has to go on. Otherwise, we go back to doing business the old way.
Up next on Latitude, tunneling into the past and a zoom out to the future. We asked the president what he wants to be remembered for. The earlier Marcos era will largely be remembered for two things: images of a confident and glamorous Philippines, a player on the global stage, and then a darker side.
On that fateful morning of September 23, 1972, when I announced the proclamation of martial law.
Of the 20 years Marcos Sr. presided over the nation, more than 8 were under martial law. Thousands were arrested without due process. Opponents were brutally suppressed. And over time, even the promise of economic progress fell to corruption and debt. Eventually, the poverty and inequality erupted into revolution. And on the night of February 25th, 1986, the family fled into exile in Hawaii. President Marcos Jr. was 28 years old. Did you then understood the idea of privilege,
Yes.
who your father was?
Oh, very quickly. Oh, very, very quickly. Because my father and my mother made very sure you're not entitled to anything. Don't ever think that they owe you. Nobody owes you anything. And that was a lesson that they hammered into us over and over again.
The Marcos name has a complex history.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Some people attribute the name to the golden age of the Philippines.
Sure.
Others say it is about martial law suppression.
Sure.
How do you define that period in the Philippine history?
Politics, by its nature, is polarizing. And so there will be those different schools of thought. But if you look at actual governance and performance and when the Philippines was progressed into the modern world, I think we can ascribe that period to the time of my father. Now, the politics intruded towards the end. To now, still define many of the way that many people still think about it.
Are you a different president from your father?
I have to be. It's a different time. There's fundamental lessons that I still hold close to my heart. But in terms of the practical things that you do, very few of those things apply any longer.
How is Mom? She's in her 90s.
Yeah, but I always say she's 95 years old. She didn't get the memo. She doesn't believe she's 95 years old. And she's still very active. I mean, I still get calls from her and she says, you need to do this, you need to do that.
Does she try to advise you, even as
Constantly.
president of the Philippines?
Constantly. And you know, I always learn something new with my mom. In my family, she's the real politician. And she's a natural. My father was an intellect, he was a statesman. We always said that he lived in his head. You know, he was very, very, very deep thinker. That's where I learned. My mother, on the other hand, she has this uncanny ability to connect with any kind of person. Any person she runs into in the street, kings, presidents, anyone, her childhood friend, she doesn't know how to fight. She's very bad at conflict.
She's known for the glitzy dinners for celebrities, like Prince Charles, like Muhammad Ali. Do you remember those days?
Oh, sure. Especially we were studying abroad. She would take us on trips. The advantage was she pulled us out of school. But then you got to meet these people. Look, for example, the first trip of the government of the Philippines to the People's Republic of China was in 1974. She brought me with her. I was 16. I met Chairman Mao when I was 16 years old. I've met all of the Secretary Generals of the UN. I've met all the presidents of the United States. I've met most of the heads of states of ASEAN and Asia. President Nixon, when he came here, gave me the first commercial ticket to fly to the moon because he knew I was interested in all that. So, you know, these are remarkable experiences. I am a lucky, lucky person. I mean, I always say that. Of all the people that I know, I'm the luckiest person that I know.
And when you take a look at the Philippines today and future generations, what would you like them to take away from your years in office?
That I served. That I was true to my principles of, again, duty, honor, country. History is always kinder than the contemporary. When it's written, I hope that shines through. I wanted to serve because it's my duty, and I served with honor, and I served my country.